Welcome back to Generation Influence, a podcast focusing on the movers and shakers working behind the scenes in influencer marketing and e-commerce. I'm your host, Bill Hildebolt, one of the co-founders of gen.video, a leading platform in the influencer marketing space focused on advanced analytics and e-commerce outcomes. My guest today is Nycole Hampton, Senior Director, Content and Engagement Marketing at GoodRx, where she's been for the last 2 years. Prior to that, she was in the agency world, working at MWW, Allison Partners, and Weber Shandwick, always in leadership roles focused on social media and influencers. To our listeners, even if you're not in the healthcare vertical, you're going to want to stick around for this conversation. Having worked on both the agency and brand side, Nycole has formed a really strong and interesting view on how you organize yourself for success in these campaigns, and I'm pumped to jump into it. Nycole, before we talk organizational principles, let's talk more broadly. First, starting with your philosophy on what separates, again, great influencer or social campaign from an average one. And by the way, feel free to also introduce yourself and add any biographical notes to the intro I gave. But welcome to the show, and let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here. Yeah, that's a great first question. Love to kick it off with this. I think when you're building a great influencer campaign, a great influencer program, the most important thing that you've got to think about is having the right partners. And I know that sounds funny or obvious. Everyone's like, of course, we're getting the right partners. But I think there's still a lot of people who are thinking about influencers from the sense of what size are they? Is it a micro? Are we running a micro or macro campaign? Or are we using nanos? And it's like, even thinking from that perspective is kind of taking a bit away from like, who is the right partner for your brand? And I always kind of joke when I write about this stuff, I usually like capitalize right, because it's so important. And I don't think people really think about it as they should. Like, having the wrong people not only can lead to poor performance from that person, but it can actually hurt your brand. It can erode brand trust. There's all sorts of things. So first and foremost, the right person. Are they authentic to the brand? Are they already a fan? If they haven't used it before, get them super familiar. Make sure it's something that fits authentically into their channel. It's, similar to other things they're talking about. It's something they can integrate. If not, their audience is going to, for lack of better words, either call BS or feel that they're just kind of, that you're just checking a box to get some money. So the right partner. Another thing, diverse mix. This should not be a box you're checking. You should always be thinking about your influencer mix as kind of a reflection of your customers. What does your customer base look like? Your influencers need to reflect that. Your customers are diverse, all different types of people, obviously depending, on the brand, but you have to think about getting people that are a diverse mix that reflect that. Your customers want to see themselves in the people who you're working with, and that's much more easy if they have a lot of different people that they can potentially relate to. So always make sure that you're truly representing your customers and the people you're working with. And then lastly, I think obviously genuine storytelling, if it calls for storytelling, or just really smart product integration, not just kind of insert brand here, which I think we see a lot of, especially in kind of the shopping days of social media and influencer campaigns. So just making sure that everything that you have, those three things are like pretty critical. And I think there's still a lot of like misses on those.
Wow, that was phenomenal. And as so oftentimes the case, I feel like the big winner in these podcasts in terms of learning is often me. And I feel like already we're often running on that front where, and regular listeners to the podcast will know, there's been all this commentary about micros and nanos, and I'm always the guy making the argument for the right, mids and macros. And so I love the way you just was like, no, forget that whole debate. That's not the point. The point is brand fit. It was phenomenal. And then absolutely genuine storytelling, and thinking. I do think this is something I try to bring to my clients, and love that you amplified and reiterated it. It's like, guys, this is not a one by one kind of selection. We're fielding a team. right?
Mhm.
In this campaign, it's a roster. It's something that we're going, and if everyone's a lookalike, we're probably not going to have the breadth of reach that we want. And so, forget about trying to figure out like, are there overlapping followers in a user base, but like, what's the story we're trying to tell broadly, into the market? And so that was great. What a great start. Okay. And I'm sure we'll probably come back to some of those themes as we go through.
Yeah.
So GoodRx, again, let's talk about it because, my thinking is, right, healthcare
Mhm.
generally is such a standalone industry in many ways. And so, I hope everybody's really excited to learn, quote, lessons from that industry, but you also wonder in the back of people's minds are like, oh, that's a different industry than me. Is it going to be applicable? So I'm kind of assuming your pharma adjacency poses all kinds of challenges and roadblocks. That's certainly what we've seen when we are anywhere near, pharma and or medical, even OTC stuff. Can you just talk about that? What's it like doing influencer at GoodRx?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, this is my kind of first pharma adjacent role. So I think I came in with like the same thoughts, like, what am I going to have to learn? Like, what are the things that we'll have to be careful of? And honestly, like, we're in a position, I think we're very lucky as a prescription savings company. We're not talking about drugs. We're really just talking about helping people save money on their prescriptions. So we don't have kind of a lot of the same restrictions or, the IFIs that people have to put because we're just not speaking about drugs. As a company, we're really focusing our influencer stuff on, conditions, helping people understand like we can help you save, and really just kind of through that storytelling, helping new people kind of get familiar with the brand, know that we're available to help with all of these different conditions and ways. So it definitely is a bit different. I think the one thing that's unique for us, we're obviously a service, and we're a service that
Mm.
you only need if you need. So you only need to save on prescriptions if you have prescriptions that are expensive, or if you have prescriptions that your insurance isn't covering, or whatever the case may be. But it's not something that any person, that you pass on the street, they might not have a prescription. So it very much is like, if you need it, then you need it, and it's super amazing and valuable. Versus like, let's say a product. I've worked with yogurts, airlines, all of that stuff, where a lot of people you pass on the street could potentially use that, and those could be people that you could be like selling to, or building awareness with. So it's just really thinking about it from such a different perspective. We just have to be very intentional, because it's about getting the right stories and messaging
Mm.
out there so people who need us can learn about us and can, kind of get more familiar, and not so much kind of broad based just yelling about who we are from an influencer perspective.
Mm. Very interesting. Not what I expected, but it all hangs together for sure and gives me an appreciation too. When you said in the first question, you're emphasizing the importance of storytelling. That is true always in every campaign. Doesn't matter what the product is, but I definitely feel that even more when I understand the services layer that you're working on, right? That's where, when it's a little bit more intangible, a little bit more ineffable, that storytelling becomes ever more critical. So, okay, awesome. Uh, then let's jump straight into, tell us a bit more about what GoodRx, and I'm, it's funny, GoodRx. What are GoodRx, good in the name and good also in successful activations look like?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we work with influencers a few different ways. We really utilize them as a core to our social media strategy. So that's first and foremost. We're not just kind of doing campaigns for, launches or things of that nature, but it's really fueling what I call a content engine, and that's for own social. And a
Mm.
lot of the content is utilized across other marketing channels as well. So really building kind of a social first content marketing strategy is what creators are a part of. So there's a few different things that feed into that. But from the creator perspective, we're utilizing user stories. So as I was saying earlier, it really is important to kind of understand the service, have used it for it to be relevant. So we'll work with people who have used us. That obviously poses a much more in-depth search process. It's not just looking for keywords and looking at comments, engagement, and all of that good stuff. But we're doing a lot of outreach to kind of understand, have you utilized this before? Is this something that, we can kind of like get a story out of, and very unique stories, because we want to make sure, of course, that we're hitting on all of these different ways that it matters to people, different scenarios that they've used it. Maybe they've used it, in a one time, and a quick need, maybe it beat their insurance prices, whatever the case may be. Just really looking for those like really true, authentic stories that are reflective of how, everybody uses the product. So that's one way that we use creators. It's great. We've got really incredible stories. We also use like doctors, healthcare providers for, med talk or health talk. And we do a lot of like educational content. So that's also a big place that we kind of are able to use creators and, create content, whether it's, it's Heart Health Month now, and we have a big heart health campaign. So we're working with them to, talk about different things when it comes to heart health, whether it's high blood pressure, et cetera. And again, they're a part of a much larger, social strategy, content strategy, where they're a part of, the story of heart health, education, how GoodRx can help. So it's like two very diverse programs, but both have been really incredible ways just to, get information and value out to people, and not just really kind of, talk about the brand, or, kind of focus on people necessarily, or just being like a hard sell. I would say it's really about kind of the relationship and providing value in real stories.
So what I find so interesting about that is you've achieved something that I think so many brands find challenging, which is one, being able to repurpose the content thoughtfully across multiple channels. And two, being more evergreen and always on. And so as you were talking, I'm sitting here thinking like, what's the difference here? Like what's the trigger? And what jumped out for me was that you're not launching new products, every quarter or every year, or, whatever it is. If every physical product company is thinking about that next product launch and how do I support it? And so much energy and effort is geared into that, gearing up for those launches, succeeding in those launches. And then frankly, practically even before you've done the wrap call, so to speak, or the postmortem on what worked and what didn't, you're off to that next launch. And so that's where the back end of that, turning the best of those influencers into ambassadors, and becoming more evergreen, or, taking the great content that was developed and figuring out how to repurpose. You're already off running onto that next launch cycle, and you've worked your way around that by basically being evergreen in nature. And so it's really interesting. I don't quite know how to apply that back to my physical product clients to say, all right, other than saying like, let's be aware of this dynamic and let's be sure to push through it. But it's really, really interesting because you're at the Holy Grail. So awesome. And congrats on that. I also love adding the value educationally to your user base through the doctor programs. Like that is really smart and awesome because it's giving back, and consumers do value that. Now you kind of talked about this as you went through that, but when we've talked in the past, one of the things I love is you do have this very disciplined framework and structure between, around some of the terms that we're throwing around in the industry. And I don't think anybody's doing this like in a malicious sort of way, but right, we use terms like creators and influencers and user generated content. They've become very interchangeable. They're very much not interchangeable, and I think you've got a great framework for that. And so can you walk us through that? Because I think it'd be very, very helpful for the audience to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Sometimes you're going to have people who are multiple of the different kind of terms, but I very much still see an influencer as someone who has influence. And that doesn't even mean you have a huge following. It means you genuinely have influence over these people. You've built a community. They're willing to take action because they trust your recommendations. So really, influence is kind of the core of that word, and like that's what that group is. Now, a creator is someone who creates really good content. Now, that's up for obvious discussion of like what is good content, but it's whether it's storytelling in a really good way, whether it's beautiful content, a creative type of video. A creator is that person that's more of an in-depth creator in terms of content. Now, you can be both an influencer and creator. Like a lot of creators are incredibly kind of talented or have unique stuff going on. So they have built a large community and a large following, and people are very influenced by them because they also love the way they tell a story or the way they create their content. So you can absolutely be both. Not everyone's both. And I think an interesting thing, especially with like TikTok, I think TikTok and COVID, those things together kind of changed really kind of the face of influencers in general, because people can blow up on TikTok so quickly. Maybe you're building a community, maybe you become an influencer, but you're just kind of doing these super quick videos, and it's maybe not so much as a creator, but you're influencing. And then the UGC, I think that's an interesting one. I am an OG social media person since it began. Same with influencers. I've been in marketing almost 20 years at this point. So I very much so believe that UGC is still content that comes from brand fans. It's something that they create. You did not know they were going to create it. Maybe you encouraged it through social media by asking questions and having CTAs for people to share. But to me, UGC will always be something that your brand fans are creating. I think kind of the new fangled way that a lot of people are speaking about it is basically photography. People are selling photography or videos because it's really not, I mean, the essence of user generated content is a user of that product, is a user of that service. Like, user is the key word. I don't think that buying UGC or like buying UGC from a UGC creator is true UGC, because you're now contracting for something. Who knows? That person may or may not be an actual fan, user, whatever the case may be. But to me, that's more photography or videography. So it's a much different bucket. Also, the essence of UGC and why it's so amazing is it's this unfiltered, like, feedback, love, opinion of the brand that you had no part of. And it's just this like raw feeling that someone has, and it has such a different feel, and it just like it gives you the feels because it's like, man, that's how this person feels about the brand. And it's inspiring, honestly, in so many instances. Whereas if you're just going out there and you're buying some photography or someone to talk about your brand, I feel like those are very easy to tell, like incredibly easy to tell the difference of. I definitely respect everyone's hustle, but I will forever tried and true UGC is from your brand fans.
All right, I love that. I love how you actually use the words, because the definition is in these phrases themselves, whether it's influencer, creator, user generated content. Let's get back to the core. If we pay attention to the actual words we use and not create new definitions for them, we'll actually stay true to the meaning.
Yeah.
And actually, you touched on this in the answer a little bit, but I wonder if there's anything deeper, which is, when you say user generated content, you say you could stimulate it with things like asking questions and polls. Like, and again, let's use the metric or the benchmark here is, you want to get that authentic. You want to get those inspirational stories. So, anything that breaks that down is crossing the line. what are some of the tactics and things that you have seen work that generate the authentic response you're looking for, as opposed to, again, whether you pay them or not, starting to get down that canned, I know I'm talking to the brand now, and so it's a different dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're running social channels, like obviously the core thing you want to do is build a community. You want these people to feel like they're friends or family. It's you're really building relationships with your customers who are willing to kind of follow you and come along for the ride. So a part of that building a community is really kind of training or showing people what you'd like to see from them or what
Hmm.
you're excited to see, because I think a lot of times when people are following brands, they're thinking, A, the brand would never see anything that I said. They'll never respond to me. It's such a big brand. Like, oh my gosh. But if you are really kind of showing them that we care, everything that you're saying, we're responding, like we want to hear your feedback. We want to see how you use the brand. What's your favorite flavor? Whatever the case may be, when you're creating, having CTAs that are as simple as, share your favorite flavor, share how you use the brand, and just starting to show people and asking that, yeah, we want to see this, like we love to hear your stories. And then like as you're seeing stories, share them. If people are seeing more stories of people like them, they're going to start to feel more comfortable in sharing their own story. So I think it's relationship building, and it's showing people that their story as a customer matters and that you're excited to see it. And then I think, a lot of people, I think in this whole, UGC debate, there's always the question of like, do you pay for UGC after the fact? So if it is brand fans, like, I've seen a lot of articles recently actually where people and brands have been kind of using it without, kind of paying or without even asking and just thinking that they can use. And I think you absolutely, if a brand fan posts about you, you've got to open up a dialogue. Like there's definitely an opportunity where you can pay for that usage if it comes to that. A lot of brands are going to probably at first, try, like see if they're just able to reshare. And sometimes you might go down the conversation or down the path of a conversation of paying for usage, but I think you've got to be open to those things. I think UGC programs should never be thought of as something that's just always free. Like that's just some free content that we're definitely going to get. I think that we have to be, kind of open to paying for usage, open to, kind of having those conversations, especially if you're going to use it more than organically. If it was like a really awesome piece of content and you want to use it and paid, like you absolutely should be have a budget set aside for that kind of stuff. Like this is your community. Like these are the people who are supporting you. So you've got to have like that stuff prioritized and have some budget aside.
Love it. It's great. And what's really great about it is I think, possibly people's first reaction hearing the definition of UGC was like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. I've just got to sit around and passively wait for it. But no, it's almost more work, right? And so it's laying that foundation and it's interacting with the audience and the community and building it. So that's phenomenal. I love that. All right. Well, that was half of the stuff that I was like very excited to get to. Now let's get to the other half of the things that I was teasing sort of above in the intro to the podcast, which is so around your what I would call organizational philosophies. And so let's start with your foundation. We went quickly through your bio and jumped right into the meat, which was great. But if we bring it back, what we talked about was you've got years and years and years of experience at agencies,
Mhm.
and what's interesting about that to me is I have this sense from our conversations over time that you sort of always felt like an outsider at agencies despite all your success. And so I want to ask, is that fair? And you can say, oh, no, you're overreading into things. But fair or not fair, tell us what you took away from that time. And sometimes actually feeling like an outsider in an organization is the best way to learn because you observe it somewhat as an outsider with a third party perspective. So tell us about your time as an agency and what you took away from those organizations and structures.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, absolutely. outsider is probably a very good way to say it. I think I always have said like I'm not an agency person, which means a lot of things to me and in my opinion. Even before I got to agency, I spent probably about 8 years ish in different industries, sports, nonprofits, all of that stuff. So I very thoughtfully kind of did not enter the agency world for a long time until I was in more of kind of a leadership space, is when I kindly decided to kind of take the plunge and give it a whirl. I think there are a lot of great things about agencies in terms of kind of working with different clients, really kind of very thoughtfully being flexible in terms of, changing from client to client, really kind of understanding like how do you flex for the things that they need. And I think it really kind of helps people in that regard. Just, you're honing your kind of skills, whatever you're working on, whether influencer marketing, you're honing those skills and then you're able to flex them between what say an airline to a restaurant to this category. And I think that really helps people with their flexibility and understanding how to move quick. I think I learned a lot definitely leading teams in terms of how I wanted to structure teams on my own, like whether
Mm.
it was in the practices that I ran or outside. um, I really like having people who are kind of hybrid, and this was something I kind of started building at agencies, because something that I saw was a lot of people who kind of entered in one role and then they did that whole role kind of their entire agency career. And for me, who ever since I was younger, I always said like I wanted to be trying all of these different things, all of these different industries. I saw this opportunity to build something a little different even in agencies, to where people could do hybrid roles, because I also wanted people to be learning and to be challenged outside of just using or doing different clients. I think it's important to learn different types of industries. So when I was building hybrid, it was really a lot of times social creator, kind of content community. So really kind of those things were like a mix of the different jobs people have. They might have been half like community engagement, half, social, or half influencer, half social. And I know there's a lot of opinions about that out there. And when I say hybrid, it's not that someone is taking on two jobs, it's that someone has two functions and work is being shared among other people. So if you
Mm.
are a hybrid social person, you're not doing all of the social on your own and then all of the influence on your own. But you have shared responsibilities with other people, and then you're really kind of stretching yourself and you're understanding like how social channels work, like how content works. That's going to help you build better influencer programs. And I personally think if you're going to work an influencer, having like a social foundation is critical, because where does influencer work happen? On social. So if you don't understand content strategy, if you don't understand channel strategy, if you're not used to like how channels like change and move and every 6 months like something is completely different, how can you build the best influencer campaigns and programs? So I've found that having hybrid people like makes them really, really good at both sides of the work. So when I came here to GoodRx, I kind of call it like an internal agency. But I really wanted to kind of rethink how the team was. It was a pretty specific, like social community engagement team. And I wanted to really build for, kind of what was the need that we had, what were
Mm.
the opportunities, and then also what were people's interests. And I kind of went through that exercise with all of the folks on my team, um, and really kind of changed it into a place where everyone had like a few like different core things that they did. So I've got influencer social people that are hybrid. I've got people who are influencer and community engagement, people that do community engagement and do like a little content. Um, and to me, it was giving people an opportunity to also raise their hand, say what they were interested in,
Mm.
give them, the chance to step into something that was maybe a little outside of what they've done before, learn something completely new. But they all like help each other in terms of the roles that they have. Like it's making them better at, kind of the other side or what they had originally been doing. And everyone's super collaborative. So no one's taking on a full thing and then something else. So I think that, I mean, that's critical to me. Like I love building teams. I think that's one of the most important and most rewarding things in a career is, kind of building young professionals, like helping, really challenging and pushing them to do things that they might not even know they have in them. And really being like a supportive mentor. And I think building out these types of teams has been like super helpful in that. And it's really helped some folks in kind of their next steps.
Love all that. One of the things that popped out as you were going through that on the hybrid, which hadn't occurred to me before, was how much that would also foster collaboration, which can be so tricky to get and maintain. But if you've got people that are sort of crossing roles, if you will, and sharing responsibilities, they're going to be forced to collaborate and also be comparing to a degree, what the other person or people in that sort of sector are doing versus being in a silo where, to be honest, like if you are the only person doing something in an organization, you can kind of get into a rut about this is the only way to do something versus thinking outside the box, which gets forced when you're sharing some of those responsibilities. So that's phenomenal. I wonder, are there any other implications of, building an agency internally, which was a theme I feel like I heard you, touch on there. And so do you feel like that changes the way you approach the rest of the organization? Like, are you literally going to the rest of the organization kind of saying like, all right, we're your internal, but behaving like an external agency, like, and engaging with them differently, do you feel like, than maybe somebody who just like, okay, this is the marketing department, or the social department, right? But everybody's just in this sort of different functional role. Do you think that if have you created a different dynamic because you've positioned yourself as an internal agency?
Yeah, I think it's more so in the way that it's been built versus, kind of saying it. I don't necessarily,
Hmm.
kind of say, look, we've got an internal agency, here's how to use us. But I will say from like a like how we work perspective, two of my like lead folks on my team own different relationships throughout the company. So if you really think of like how an agency works, people have different clients. So they own kind of different stakeholders in, kind of throughout the company. So we're working together to create content, to do different things like that. So that has been incredibly effective because if you really think about a lot of like social teams back in the day, they were very siloed. First and foremost, they were brought to the table at the very end, if they ever even made it to the table. They were definitely an afterthought. But now we're meeting proactively monthly with like their different kind of relationships that they own to figure out what are the opportunities. We're always in at the very beginning of any kind of kickoff call for, a new product, a new campaign. So it changed the dynamic of being kind of the afterthought to thinking of everything very proactively and thinking of opportunities. And that's how we mentioned earlier, that's how you get things utilized outside of your own realm. So if you're creating content, you should never just create in a silo and then hope people want to use it. Like that, that's not effective. You want to understand as a company and through different teams and different departments, what kind of things are you currently using? What are you interested in testing or potentially using? Can we stretch? Can we be creative? Like, what could that look like? And then keep all of those things in mind as you're developing strategies, as you're working with new partners, because that's how you're going to get things utilized more, is building those relationships, having those early conversations, and kind of working that way. It's a constant collaboration. So that's really kind of the setup of the team. So I feel like that's been what's helped us really kind of grow and really kind of change the way that we do things, which has been great.
Phenomenal. All right. Well, last serious question I've got is, I feel like, my sense is you've been able to insource a lot of things that that other companies maybe continue to outsource to their agencies, and of course, every company's got to find their own balance of where they feel like those capabilities are internally and externally. Is there any advice you'd have for brands and people who maybe didn't have so much time at an agency and and don't have necessarily the capabilities or the expertise yet to to create some of that insourcing opportunity, and they're trying to feel out the boundaries though of what should be in-house versus external? Any advice either on how they should think about those boundaries, where to draw them, and or how to start the process of bringing in-house things that that potentially historically have been outsourced but potentially could be better as an internal function?
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, you need to have someone in kind of a leadership role that understands the functions that you're going to need, that understands how to build strategy. So if you're, bringing in like more of a senior person, so if they are going to utilize an agency, they're still leading that agency as if they're almost an or an internal team. Maybe that internal person that you have is building all of the strategies, and that doesn't even land on the agency. Your agency might be more executional. um, but it's really, having that person with the experience, they can kind of look at the company, understand the dynamic, understand the different teams, the opportunities, the needs, and then they can start to really think about what would we need, internally. Do we need, obviously you'll have some social people hopefully already. But do you need more social people? Do you need more people to do community engagement? Are there not enough people engaging and responding? Do you need, how many people do you need to do, influencer work? Or are you just doing a campaign a year? Because sure, if you're just doing one a year, maybe you just have an agency partner that you're kind of managing through that. So I think, yeah, first and foremost, get yourself, kind of a experienced person who knows how to landscape these kind of teams and get the most value out of them. I think that's kind of the thing to underscore, because you can look at all different companies and you're going to see a lot of different ways that influencers run, that socials run. You're going to see them siloed still at a lot of companies. You're going to see influencers sit in like 3 or 4 different departments still. It might be sitting in brand, growth, PR, who knows. So these things are just still so different everywhere. So if you have someone who understands what the opportunities are, they can kind of come in and help to structure and start to help think about what that could look like if the company is willing to make it internal. And if not, at least make sure that you're having the right external partners. That's super important. We've got 2 external partners that I use for our highly produced content, and they're so great because they are literally, I think if you saw all of us working together, you would not know that they're external. Like, it's the most amazing, just easy to work together. Processes are all on point. We're very flexible together. They, have the same kind of goals in terms of like making things the best for, the brand. So it does feel like they work for, work at the company versus for us, which is incredible. And we also have, some folks who do some creative for social that's outside of all the video stuff that we're doing. So just like having the right people is important, and those people that you can have really good relationships with, I think, is pretty key too.
I love that last point. I mean, the whole thing was great, very actionable for for everyone listening. I love that last point though, because I haven't thought about this all that often, but where it works really well with my clients, a very key attribute of that is I actually do feel like I work for that company
Mhm.
without frequently a lot of the politics and a lot of the the challenges that will go with with being in any specific corporate situation. Not that we don't have our own challenges and things to work through as a startup, but there's this part of me that truly feels like I am part of that client as much as anyone who's there on a full-time basis. And that is like a one-to-one relationship with the situations that are going well and are productive. That is a necessary byproduct. And so I do think that's got to be an attribute when your agency relationships are functional and productive. You definitely lose that. The barrier between the two organizations dissolves,
Yeah.
and you're acting as one for sure. So a good thing for people to look out for, just as an emotional cue, is this relationship working? Um, Probably not unlike personal relationships, to be honest, but that's a topic for another podcaster. Well, that was great. This has been great. I did want to ask you one for fun, which is, I mean, I'm honestly just super curious. Who is your favorite influencer from a purely personal perspective, not somebody who's doing stuff for GoodRx? Oh,
Mm.
this is to get to the real Nycole. And why? What do you love about them? What do they do for you?
Honestly, I definitely am cheating. This is someone that my team does work with, but I did like them before. We work with this incredible, I'll call them a duo, Jonathan and Teddy. Teddy's the dog, but we'll still call it a duo. Um, I feel like they are actually the perfect example of influencer and creator. Like the content is so creative, out of the box, super fun. People really like it and they love the creativity that's always happening, but they also have a lot of influence, and continue to grow, and people really resonate with the content, and you can tell that they're really kind of picking up on the different brands and they want to explore the brands that they're talking about. So I think that just that is the kind of stuff that I love. People who are just really kind of honing the craft over time too, and just not scaling back or just kind of phoning it in ever, but the creativity just keeps on climbing, which I think is so fun.
That is fun. That is fun. I'm not personally a huge like pet person myself, but I will say we do a lot of work in the pet vertical, and there is definitely something magical about the interaction between human and pet. When that relationship is great, that you can absolutely feel through the screen, and in many ways live vicariously through that joy and that love of that relationship, which is always so pure and sincere. And so that's a good one. I like it. Well, we're all gonna have to go out and check out Jonathan Teddy and see how they bring things to life for GoodRx as well. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Nycole. So many valuable lessons. I can't wait for this to go live and unpack it all for the audience. And everyone will certainly get many things out of this. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone else, for listening. And we'll see you next time on Generation Influence.
Thank you.